Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who haven't been to a council meeting or a presentation yet, my name is Jason Giese. I represent Arizona Eco Development, which is the company that will be proposing annexation of the property that everybody's here to discuss tonight. Before we get started, what I plan to do is roll through my slides for the benefit of the folks that have not seen them already. And then Nigel Reynolds actually was kind enough and thought ahead because he was at the previous presentation. He put together a couple of his own slides for mapping purposes to make sure that everybody's properly oriented to the area that we're talking about. We don't have the ability, we don't have a mic in the back, so if you guys could just, in an orderly fashion, filter down into the seats here on my right to be able to ask the question into the mic for the benefit of the rest of the crowd, so that folks can hear the question that was asked and then hear my response. That would be great. Don't think I have anything else to go over, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and walk through the slides one more time. It's easier for me just to hold the mic. The slides haven't changed. A popular question since we started the process of talking about the annexation has been, I'd like to see how your plan is evolving. Our plan has not evolved as of yet. It hasn't entered the public process as of yet in an official capacity. This is the second voluntary open house that I've hosted. The point of the open house is to open the dialogue early and in the hopes that we can find constructive ways to work on the plan. The annexation process is designed for the public to be able to comment. And as we move forward into the annexation process, another question that I get asked quite frequently is, Jason, how long will the process actually take? The honest answer to that question is there's no way of knowing. We have a statutory, there's a set of statutory timeframes that have to be fulfilled per state law for an annexation. Then we have the rezoning component, which is governed by Prop 400 at the City of Prescott. So the reality of it is we have a minimum of 4 public meetings that are prescribed plus an open house on the annexation, so that's 5. As we wade into the process, I may be asked to host an additional meeting. I may not, but as I enter the public process, the scheduling is not mine. I don't control the schedule. The schedule will be controlled by the City of Prescott, and the City of Prescott will continue to obviously make sure that the public is notified via press release, the paper, their website, etc. So the point is, this is again a series of meetings. It's a process that evolves over the course of time, and I like to look at it as a conversation that will frankly end as a negotiation. And so Ben is helping me out in the back with the slides, and Nigel was kind enough to make a pointer because we had trouble last time with the laser pointer, so this thing's handy. He's the MVP tonight. He's not associated with me, okay? He's just a concerned citizen, so thank you, Nigel. The first slide here, oh, I stepped on the cord. The first slide depicts the ranch, not all of the ranch, but the southern portion of the ranch. And the main landmark is the City of Prescott's airport right here. 89A running east to west through the ranch. Watson Lake is over here in the corner. Nigel's map does a real nice job of depicting the lake so you can see the proximity. The point of this slide is to demonstrate the status or option that Arizona Eco has to leave the property in the county and split it into 36-acre parcels and offer them for sale. We have chosen not to go ahead and do that. Presently, the market for 36-acre parcels is strong. We are asking to be annexed into the city of Prescott. It has the highest standard as far as the land development code goes. And frankly, the property is a Prescott property, in my opinion. So when we apply for annexation, the main point is we do so voluntarily. Benny, if I could get the next slide. This slide depicts the amendment to the general plan to the city of Prescott. This was voted on, I believe, in December of 2015. And the goal was to set up the property from a general plan perspective with land uses, which I recognize are very hard to see here today, but set the stage so that as we rolled into the annexation into the future, we had taken the first step so that our application will be consistent with what was previously approved by the City of Prescott Council at the time.
Jason, could you go back one slide and show everybody where the Peavine and the Iron King Trail splits, please?
Sure. This one or the next one?
That one should do fine.
Okay. So the the Peavine Trail is here, running north to south. Entro is right here, and the Iron King Trail running into the town of Prescott Valley is here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jason, what use does the general plan call for there?
What use, where exactly?
What land use, where you were pointing?
What's the zoning?
There's open space around the Entro, and then there's a resort, and then low-density residential development. You're welcome. This slide I presented in October of 2017 at a city council meeting, City of Prescott City Council meeting. And I've kept the Storm Ranch on here just so that I'm consistent. The disclaimer for this meeting, just like the last meeting, is that we do not have a deal to purchase this portion of the Storm Ranch. But as soon as I start taking things off the map, people wonder what I'm putting on the map. So I've been very careful to be consistent and show the timeline and the evolution of the ranch to date. Down low, this property is approximately 900 acres. The Dells subdivision right here. I think everybody's well oriented. Granite Dells traffic interchange is right here on Highway 89. The north node for annexation, and then a piece of property that's being offered to the city of Prescott for the future expansion of their airport, should that occur. Next slide, Ben. This is just a blow up of the northern node. About 1,500 dwelling units worth of residential. Granite Creek sewer treatment plant owned by the City of Prescott Airport.
How big are those lots?
How big are the lots? In the north boundary, they're small. That's a high density production type subdivision. Blow up of the southern area. Again, the trail coming through, the trail being the Peavine in this case. The Iron King traverses through here. Production subdivision up in the northern area where historically the Wilkinson family and their successors farmed. Resort zoning down in this area. And then low density residential around the Point of Rocks in that area. 2 to 4 acres is what is on the map presently. It's hard for me to see folks in this a bigger venue, obviously. So with that, that's the basic orientation. What I'd like to do is have Nigel come up, give him the honor since he was proactive of presenting his map to make sure that everybody is oriented properly. Thank you, Nigel.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard my name now, I'm Nigel Reynolds. Probably some of you know me, some of you don't. Why am I up here? What are my credentials? I've lived in Arizona for 40 years and Prescott for 20 years. You can probably tell by my accent that I'm a native. I do a number of things for trails and things like that in the city. You may have recognized my articles in the Courier every other Sunday. You may know that my guide for Circle Trail is my guide, and also I do the maps for the spring. But anyway, I'm not blowing my horn. I'm here not to answer questions, but to try and more clearly indicate where things are, because I saw some of these maps last time. I still find them a bit confusing. I hope you can find my maps are a little easier to follow, but we'll see. So if we can get my first map, and I've got two basic maps, N1 and N2. N stands for Nigel. Okay, we seem to be missing quite a bit at the bottom, so I don't know whether you can make it a bit smaller so that the whole map is on the screen. And by the way, I hope you can all hear me, but if I do this, just yell Mike and I'll remember to stick the mic in my teeth. This first map, you can read if it goes past, is a 20,000 to 1 scale. The more focused map is a 12,000 to 1 scale. And if during any questions you have, you feel you'd like one of these two maps to help you pose your question or for the question to be answered, remember the 20K and the 12K, or N1 and N2. Well, I'm going to start working on this because it looks like we're having some problems to... All right, now you've got most of it here, and you can see this blue here is... Thank you. The blue is Watson Lake. You can see the Peavine coming up here, going around there. The junction of the Iron King and the Peavine goes further north. I chose not to go out to the airport because I think most of us here are interested in the Dells, and I don't think anyone would say the Dells extend to the airport. Okay, so this is the map scale. You can't read what's here because it's off the bottom of the screen, but what I've done, okay, you can see I've got the roads are red, trails are green, and the Prescott is open space, is this yellow color here. It was green when I did it, but obviously it's changed color. The state of Arizona land is this pale purple here and up there. Arizona Eco Development, Mr. Geese's land is here, and we'll see a close-up of that in a bit so it'll be easier to see. And then there's other private land, and this is the Storm Ranch he was talking about, properly called Sundog, but the Storm is what everybody calls it. And right at the bottom, if you can see this, it says City of Prescott Boundary, and that is important. And you can see this has got these crisscrosses on it, so does this piece here. And that means that land has been annexed into the city. You'll notice that this is not cross-hatched. That is Mr. Geese's land, and he is telling you he's hoping that will be annexed into the city. Another thing Mr. Geese mentioned at the last meeting where I was at, and that is that perhaps he also would approach Prescott Valley to be annexed to them. And you can see here that, well, here at least, this is annexed, and his land would be adjacent to that. This piece of Arizona State Trust land is the Prescott Valley Annex. So that is the nearest that you can get to the Arizona Eco Development land. So if you want to scroll it down a bit so we can see a bit higher, that would be good. And I guess I should move out of the way so you can see better.
Nigel?
Yes?
Excuse me, what's the block to the left of Mr. Geese's land there? It runs along Granite Creek, maybe?
Okay, this here,
No, lower.
here,
Lower? One more down.
This here?
That block right in there.
Okay, that says Granite Dells subdivision, and you maybe can't read it right there. And I haven't tried to assign ownership to all the other white. The key pieces of white was the Storm Ranch, the Granite Dells estates up there, which has been annexed into the city, you can see, and that is already under development. Houses have been and will continue to be built. So I concentrate on this piece of the AED land coming down around here. Did that clarify?
So then, is that block I was asking about, is that other ownership?
Everything that's white is privately owned.
Right.
Other than, well, if you like, Mr. Geese's land is privately owned, but I've indicated what that is, and I've indicated, I think, these two important points here, but I did not try and get into detail just because there was no room to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we can move on to my smaller zoomed-in scale, which is the 1 to 12,000, and that is my also called N2.
Hi, Joe, for perspective, can you show us where the parkway is?
The what is?
Prescott Lakes Parkway, or where it's
I think on this zoomed-in, Prescott Lakes Parkway is off to the further south and further east. So if you know where Watson Lake is and you know where the Peavine is, then I think that should help you. So here we're now on the 12,000 scale. You've got the same definitions here, but now we're zoomed in. So we zoomed in. So here is where the Peavine Trail goes north, the Iron King goes east, and this little dot here is a point of rocks, and not everybody knows exactly where it is, but there's a high point here, and it's actually on this piece of land that is AED land. And you can also notice here, this road crosses the Peavine at this point, and this comes down to the Storm Ranch. So the amount of traffic on this road is pretty minimal. I think it just goes back and forth to Mr. and Mrs. Storm. I don't think that's their name, but I'm going to use that, okay? And then you can see I've drawn another map, another road coming down here, and that comes off of the Granite Dells Estates land at the top. So that is another road that comes in. And I didn't point out on the previous map, but the old 89A was on the north part of that map, and that crosses the Peavine somewhere off this map. In fact, if you can read that, that says old US 89A, and that crosses the Peavine, but not at the same level. The Peavine is on a bridge over the road at that point. Okay, so if we can go on to my...
Nigel, what is the grave? What is the grave on the map there?
Say what?
What is the grave on the map? The black dot.
Boblet. Boblet grave.
I'm not understanding you. I think there's somebody else explain to her.
Yeah, it's Boblet grave. It's a pioneer grave.
Okay.
You talking about this grave?
No, the grave marked grave. The
Oh,
black dots.
that's irrelevant. Some of you may know about that because it's on the USGS topo maps, and it's not of value to know that. Some of you may have been there, and if you go there again, you'll be trespassing. But I just marked it because it was a point of reference that some of you may have noticed from other maps. So can we go to my 2B map, sir? Wherever you are. Okay, that's good. What I have added to the previous map is topography, contour lines. And I hope they are visible back there. And this will give you an idea of where there's buildable land and where there isn't buildable land. I mean, for example, nobody's going to build a house on top of this hill. And you can also see here the point of rocks is the high point in this little set of rocks. So, and also as you go further up this way, there's less contour lines, so there's less topography there. So if we go one more map. It's the same basic map, but I've added a little bit more extra stuff on it, and we haven't moved to it yet. This is my, I think, 2B. The last one's 2A. That looks like the one. You can make that big. Okay, we've now got the topographic details. What I did to give an idea of size, because we talk about 500 acres, 1,000 acres, I don't have any understanding of that, but you can't obviously see, but this is the pink color here that is Mr. Geese's Echo Development Land.
How many total acres?
And here, this is one I can put easily. Parcel 3 is just my name for this land from here down to here, across and around. Parcel 4 is across this piece of land here. Parcel 2 is there, and parcel 1 is up the top. But so you can see that this lump of land is 61 acres. And this, I think, is an important piece of land for the city or somebody else to acquire, because if there's no houses to be built on this, then there's no need for a road to come across here, or for this road to get across to there. Equally, I think this piece of land, if it could be acquired by the city or whoever, would also not require heavier traffic coming down the Storm Ranch Road. So this piece and this piece are key, and you can see the sizes. This one, the size is missing. It's about 60 acres too. So basically, they're the maps that I hope will be helpful to you in asking questions, and Mr. Geese will be very fair enough to use them. And if he's not sure whether it's a 2A or 1N or 6Q, then I will try and help out and maybe spool back to the projectionist and help him to get the right map. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Nigel. I appreciate that very much. So at this point, Q&A. Nigel's map is very beneficial. We have various slides, obviously. We'll toggle back and forth, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Again, obviously the folks up front they're just fine kind of shouting out the questions, and that's fine. That doesn't bother me a bit. Someone would like to come up to the mic, then that is available to them. So, Walt, thank you. I can't believe we didn't have more hands than that.
Well, I'm sure there will be. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity to talk. Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to talk, and also the map is a good reference point. I'm Walt Anderson, and as you know, Jason, I've lived and worked in Prescott for 27 years, and I'm a wildlife biologist, educator, and artist, and I want to speak on behalf of the scientific and aesthetic values of the Granite Dells ecosystem. It has been said that a landscape without wildlife is mere scenery. Think about that. Scenery does have value, and the attractive views from the Peavine and Iron King trails are worth a lot. But what really makes the trails special and priceless is the life that we find there. The songs of thrasher or towhee or canyon ram, the telltale tracks or scab of deer or bobcat or mountain lion. The sight of a lizard doing push-ups or a gorgeous Sonoran Mountain king snake gliding across a trail, or a canyon tree frog resembling a piece of animated granite. A rare golden eagle or peregrine falcon cruising among the peaks. Even the silent residents, the delicate ferns, the fragrant flowering shrubs, the stately pines and weathered junipers, the exuberant blossoms of penstemon, 4 o'clock, skyrocket gilia, or coral bells, bring us joy and inspiration. They're priceless. Wildlife, as you know, Jason, needs food, water, cover, and freedom to move. This means space, so wildlife corridors are vital. The AED proposal as presented would irreparably damage this ecosystem. Roads mean roadkill. Houses mean cats, subsidized predators of ground nesting birds, lizards, and even rabbits. Construction means both immediate disturbance and long-term fragmentation of habitats. Fragmented populations rarely survive. Look what happened to the poor pronghorns trapped in Prescott Lakes when that was developed. I know, Jason, that you do love and appreciate wildlife. Your hunting experiences are your emotional reward for all the hard work you do in your business. Equally good news is that you have multiple reasons to protect wildlife habitat. You need to set aside, as you mentioned, a significant portion of your planned area development anyway, and you have pledged through your website to be, and I quote, sensitive to local needs and concerns of the area's citizens, without the depletion of natural resources, to maximize open space and to minimize environmental impact so that both new residents and neighbors can continue to enjoy the marvelous nature of the area. Those are your very words. Wow, what an opportunity for a win-win-win outcome for people, wildlife, and your company. The key to overall success will be how your desired open space is situated. The southern portion of the homestead unit around the trails, as Nigel pointed out, currently allows wildlife to move from the safety of the rocky canyons to the essential water and cover of Granite Creek. One of the key areas is the lush valley on the north side of the Iron King Trail that's indicated as No Name Creek up here. It runs west through a beautiful valley with springs, seeps, and tall trees to Granite Creek near the old 89A bridge. That valley has inestimable value to wildlife. Roads and houses here would have devastating effects on wildlife and would ruin the scenic views prized by hikers and cyclists along the trails. How fortunate we are to have trails in the spectacular Granite Dells, and how kindly the future will look upon us all if we do the right thing and keep the Granite Dells ecosystem intact. Pushing the proposed housing north, or perhaps even expanding the northern unit, would satisfy your financial ambitions and cement your company's legacy as a true eco-development. The city would retain its most popular trails with all their economic and recreational value to our residents and visitors alike, and wildlife could continue to thrive. Jason, we sincerely hope that you share that vision. Thank you.
Give me 1 second there, Gene. Walt, I appreciate it. This is not intended, I see lots of, looks like speeches coming up. It's intended to be questions and answered, and I'm happy to do that. But the intent is not to sit here and listen and turn this into a pep rally, if you will. If folks would like to have their own pep rally, then that's great, I'll come attend it. So, Gene, go ahead.
Okay, I'll have questions in mind too. I would like to recap a couple things that you said in the first open house. One is that you asserted Arizona Eco Development's rights to private property, and you just now told us that you could divide this property into 36-acre parcels. Question, how much financial gain would that get you?
Depends on what the value of the parcels are at the time that we sell it.
Yes, you just said that there is a market for 36-acre parcels. You must have a
You're
good
looking for an
handle on it.
example?
Yeah.
So you know where Coyote Springs is or Paquito Valley?
Yes.
36-acre parcels closed, selling for about $450,000 a piece. So I don't know how you would compare the Point of Rocks area to Paquito Valley, but there's a distinct difference.
Yes, there is. I would say Point of Rocks is the most expensive property, and it's the area around it in Prescott. It certainly is the most valuable to the citizens of Prescott. So how many 36-acre parcels could you create with the total acreage that you have?
Off the top of my head, there's about 13 down low in the Point of Rocks area. The total ranch yields something like 120, a lot.
All right. I'm not going to try to do the math, but somebody taking notes can do it for me. You also made 2 threats against the good people of Prescott. One is, you would chop up the land into 36-acre parcels, which you said is your right.
I don't know how that's a threat when it's protected under state law. And you're an attorney, so I think you understand that.
I understand that. You also said you could go to Prescott Valley and ask them for annexation.
They called the day after my presentation.
How much would that cost Prescott Valley?
I don't have any idea. I don't work at Prescott Valley. I know this, Jasper was annexed into the town of Prescott Valley in 120 days at the cost of $36,000. I estimate the cost of this annexation about $350,000, and I don't know how many days it's going to take. So we're taking a significant risk by going the hard way, if you will, and I think that should be noted.
Good. We hope you will pursue that hard way, and we'd like to help you. We all enjoy our private property rights. I think almost everyone in this room owns property or rents property, and those private property rights then flow through their rental agreements. So we appreciate your assertion of your private property rights. But, as John D. Rockefeller said, every right implies a responsibility, every opportunity an obligation, every possession a duty. It takes vision to fulfill that responsibility when you own a crown jewel. And the Dells, the Point of Rocks area, is the crown jewel of the city of Prescott and the Prescott area. And we are asking you to have that vision for the future. If you think back about how New York City developed and Central Park was created, the land barons in those days had vision. They created a wonderful Central Park open to the public, the most beautiful crown jewel in the city of New York, and surrounding it are the most expensive properties in New York City.
So if I could cut you off there.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the density surrounding Central Park?
I think it's extremely dense. Yes.
So in our last meeting, the one actionable thing that I heard was the potential for density transfer.
Yes.
Land Development Code, which we're intending to apply in accordance with. We're not looking for a variance from the LDC, Land Development Code, sorry. The question that I have in my mind, frankly, is if there is support to preserve more open space, and that costs the city of Prescott potentially more water in the bargain, is that something that your group would support?
I can't speak for the entire group. I personally would support it if the water is there. That's the question. Is the water there to make the trade? We want to see a fair trade. But right now, we know that if that land is chopped up, if it's developed, if there are houses put on it, and all that goes along with houses, roads, fences, walls, it will never be the same. It will never be able to be open space. So what we're asking is for you not to develop that area while in respect of your private property rights, find the money to acquire that property to be part of a larger vision for a larger regional park for the city of Prescott. That's the ask. Now, you've said yourself, it's all about the deal.
So then what's the action?
The action,
Absolutely.
The action on-
So it's easy for all of us to sit here and kick around the topic. We all agree that it's a wonderful piece of land. It might be the best piece of land in northern Arizona. Could be. What I need to see is actionable possibilities. And when I look at the website for Save the Dells and I see 400 acres preserved, I'm going to be straight up and honest and say I don't see where 400 acres is going to end up being a fair deal for the owner of the property who paid for it already and owns it.
400 acres is actually less than 25% of the total acreage you're asking to be annexed. And there is a
All
25%
land is
open space
not, all land is
requirement.
not created equally, and I recognize that the website says 2.6% of our total land holdings. But when we look at land out by Chino in the middle of the valley, it has value, but it pales in comparison to this piece of land. And so when we talk about 400 acres, it's 45 to 50% of the southern annexation. That's how I do the math, because there's one piece of property of that character in the entire range.
So I have a question, if I could kind of take the next turn.
All right, I'll defer to,
Sure.
And you wrote a beautiful piece on this. Jean wrote a beautiful piece on this when she was part of the council.
Turn the mic up.
Hello? I'm already loud. Okay, so Jean just reiterated something that she brought up years ago when she was part of the council. Elizabeth Ruffner this week talked about how 50 years ago they wanted to get this to be a state park. And the steps that it took to become that were too onerous. So here we are 50 years later still talking about a piece of property that every single person in this town values, not just in this town, but in Phoenix and other people that come from Maricopa County and from all over the world. So here's my question. Just because you can make a lot of money, should you? Ask Martin Shkreli. The trust that owns this, the estate that owns this, is a multi-million dollar estate. The person that needs to make the money here, and I understand it because I've been an accountant, I understand about rows and columns. You still didn't answer the question about how much money you expect to make. That hasn't come up. But here's the deal. The Swanson family could put this as a donation and have their name emblazoned for the rest of their lives because they are the primary owners. And they picked this up for a song. And just because you bought something when bankers lied to so many people and you got bankruptcies out of it, I don't really see how that serves the Swanson family. And if you want to stay here, I don't see how it serves you. So to me, this feels like extortion. I'm done.
My name is Amber Fields, and I'm the communication director for Save the Dells. And I don't really have a question for you, but I do have some ideas. And please bear with me because they come at the end of this. So I would like to read an anonymous letter from a fellow Prescott native that is not able to be here because they live out of state. However, this individual has an interest in the planning of local amenities and open space, not only as a Prescott native, but also as the owner of real estate in downtown Prescott, and as well as in Yavapai County at Williamson Valley Road. His letter reads as follows. The city of Prescott has an opportunity to protect one of the region's most remarkable natural areas by negotiating to set the Granite Dells aside as open space, which would have a lasting impact on our recreation economy and the quality of life for residents. I want to speak about some of my personal experiences growing up in Prescott, the impact the Dells had during my teen years, and a better way forward for the city of Prescott. The first time I was arrested, I was 13 years old. As young teens with a love for adrenaline, my friends and I had what seemed to be limited options during those early years. We would steal liquor, smoke pot, steal our parents' vehicles, and go into town to vandalize indiscriminately. It was a progression with each weekend, an attempt to be more destructive than the last. Being arrested did little to change our behavior because it didn't offer a better alternative. I continued on the path until my brother introduced me to rock climbing. I was hooked from the start. Instead of competing with my friends to see who could down a fifth of tequila the fastest, I began competing with myself to work out climbing problems. I learned to focus, and I developed the discipline needed to be a relatively good climber for my age. By the time I was 16 years old, I was leading difficult routes in the Granite Dells, had confidence in myself, had a desire to travel and explore, and wanted to live a quality of life filled with adventure. 25 years later, I find myself living in Colorado, in an area that has embraced the outdoor economy. Historically, recreation in this area was centered on skiing, but in recent years that has evolved to focus more and more on summer activities. My new town has been hard at work acquiring open space, developing in-town biking trails so youngsters can ride to school, and developing and marketing a world-class mountain bike trail system. Just this past year, our town's open space department, with the help from our local land trust and private donations, acquired the largest, most desirable tract of land in our valley to set aside as open space to the tune of $15 million, which is not a small investment for a community of under 40,000 people. From an economic standpoint, prioritizing quality of life has been paying off. We're becoming more of a destination for travelers. Our economy is booming. People want to move here from other areas because of our recreation opportunities, and drugs and alcohol are less of a problem with the upcoming generation. Prescott has so many opportunities to do similar work to improve the quality of life for residents, create healthy options for youth, and stimulate its economy by attracting outdoor-minded people. Every winter, my wife and I travel to Prescott to visit family, escape cold, and recreate in places like the Granite Dells. The acquisition of the Granite Dells would be another major contribution to the area's list of attractions. AED can be successful developing their land outside of the Dells while working with the City of Prescott to protect all of the remaining undeveloped Dells that they own. I'm hopeful groups like Save the Dells and individuals advocating for a regional park are successful. That's the end of his letter, but I would like to say I have a copy of an article from the Vale Daily newspaper for council members, if they're here, which I hope they are, and Jason Giese, about the Hardscrabble Ranch, which is the open space mentioned in this individual's letter, to serve as an example of how a developer successfully worked with the community to accomplish their development while protecting the most desirable land in their region. And thank you for letting me speak.
Hi again, Jason.
Hello.
So last time, okay, sorry. Read this at the same time. I hope you don't mind if I turn away from
You're
this.
okay.
I can read this, thank you. I don't mean to be rude. We talked about ingresses and egresses. Do you have the thing that points to the map by chance?
It's very technical, but yes, I do.
Can you point to the one that would go above ground on the Peavine Trail, the road that would go above ground on the Peavine Trail that you talked about last time?
The existing crossing here?
The road that you would build, not the existing one, but the road that you would build above the...
This one is under.
No, the above ground one.
It's off the map
Okay.
to the north.
Okay, so I'll just read this then. We had talked about how many homes would cross the above ground Peavine parcel, which would be 400 homes, meaning 2 cars per person is what the city figures. So 800 cars, and the city figures 10 ingresses and egresses per car when they're figuring a new subdevelopment. That would mean 8,000 cars going on the overcrossing of that new road on the across the Peavine Trail. On the 600 homes on the north parcel, which would cross the Iron King, it would be 12,000 cars. So 8,000 cars on the Peavine, plus residents, guests. And 12,000 cars on the Iron King trails, plus resident guests. And on both of them, we would add the guests who would be staying at the 100 casitas resort. So 100 different little casitas for guests at the resort. So what we would like to know at the Save the Dells is, because there are little kids running tricycles and people riding bicycles and runners and all sorts of traffic back and forth on the Peavine Trail constantly, even during the week in the middle of the day, and on the Iron King trails, what are the chances of doing underground, like the 2 other roads you said would be underpasses, of doing underpasses on those roads so that they did not disrupt you know, the normal
I'm gonna
recreational traffic of these trails?
answer and tell you that to go above ground in this existing location, it would be very costly and difficult. To go above the trail in that location is not something that we've contemplated, but in the past on the Granite Dells, which is now known as the Dells, there was a discussion about a bridge to get to a grade separated crossing. As we get into the traffic impact analysis that we pay for, but we don't order, the city of Prescott orders it, those are questions, comments, concerns that start to be addressed at the point that we have the statistics put together for the benefit of staff, sitting politicians, and frankly the public in the meetings. So I don't have a direct answer, but I know that this one's very difficult to go under. The opportunity to go under here is just simply based on the fact that the railroad, there's drainage, Walt talked about it previously, and the railroad is elevated. There's in essence a levee. And so your questions are valid, noted, and at the point that we have the traffic impact analysis, the results of that analysis will be gone over as part of the public process and part of the annexation process.
Thank you. So the next part then is on the north parcel, you'll have 1,700 homes, and on the south parcel, you'll have 1,550 homes as it stands now. That's 3,300 homes with 2 persons per home, and 66, so 6,600 times 0.25 acre feet per person to give the 100-year state compliance for a subdivision. And you have, am I right, you have 800 acre feet at this point? I know you had 375 from the sale of the ranch.
Yeah, we will be making a request of the city of Prescott for water. We have 375 that is a water right that dates into the 1800s. And then we own another couple hundred acre feet of extinguishment credit water presently. So I don't know where the 800 is coming from.
Okay, so that was too high. Somebody just told me that there was an additional 200, which I didn't know about. So out of the 1,650, then you'll have 400? No, 375? 500. 500. So you would be asking the city then for 1,500 acre feet of water.
I want to make sure I'm following you. You're multiplying everything by 100 years to conform or
right. The 2.5 is what the state gave me.
Mm-hmm.
AZDW 0.25.
No, right, exactly.
0.25. No, I'm sorry, I didn't say the point.
0.25 is a very conservative number, and it's not what we use here in the city of Prescott because the actual consumption is tracked by the city. We know the average consumption.
But does the state not? Okay, I was at a meeting yesterday in Prescott Valley with the AZDW, and they told me that it was a state compliance, and that they figured it at 0.25 per person, 2 persons per home.
The city of Prescott is a designated water provider. The town of Prescott Valley operates under a totally different set of rules.
I know, WAM.
So, well, yeah, but that's not it. The water is acquired and certified by the state in the Prescott Valley and in Chino. In the city of Prescott as a designated water provider, Prescott makes its own decisions because they basically have a master portfolio of water that's already been approved by the state.
Correct. And you would be drawing from the Salt River water.
Salt River?
That's what you have. That's what you stated in your homepage.
The Salt River is in Phoenix.
I realize that. So in there.
So I don't.
Yeah, it just stated that on your website. So I was wondering about that. So
I'll double check that.
About that.
Yeah.
Okay. So just looking at the differences in going to Prescott Valley, going to County, going to Prescott, or going to Chino Valley, which are the 4 options that the development has as far as who you annex to, where you get water, et cetera, and also getting water separately. So Prescott Valley, as far as square foot for real estate, is 156, and the median house price would give you 245, which means that you would make on those 3,300 homes $808,500. On county, well, I won't go through all the little details, but I'll just give you the 10 numbers.
Yeah, maybe we should let someone else go too. You have a question in there? Or?
Yes, I do. So it would, for county, you would make $95,400,000. On Chino Valley, you would make $743,500,000, and Prescott, ding, 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 would be $1,122,000,000. So obviously, with a net gain of anywhere, and that would be not including if you built along Peavine Trail and had the view of the lake, that you could get easily $100,000 more per house. So maybe a third of those. You add another $583,000. That means that you would have it somewhere between a net gain over the other towns of $162 to $304 million. Now, considering that Prescott Valley wants to charge you $35,000 to $40,000 per acre foot, and you are already turning away from them, and the gain of Prescott having everything but, well, I guess we do have a shooting range in the bowling alley that Prescott Valley has, but everything else, what you would be getting is amazing. So folk festival, bluegrass festival, jazz festival, now a new annual country rock festival, Akronite Poet Festival, folk festival, the Elks, 3 performance halls.
Ma'am, we have folks lining up behind you.
Right, but what
Could
I'm saying
you
is
summarize
that
and
this is,
be
yeah,
done?
what I'm saying is that this is an economic benefit for you that would attract people.
Let me help you
to
out.
homes.
We will make money whether we're in Yavapai County, the town of Prescott Valley, or the city of Prescott.
But you'll make a hell of a lot more. in
We might,
Prescott.
and we might not. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Guidance. Betty, can I trouble you to go back to Nigel 1, please? And if you could zoom out to the widest possible expansion of that image. I want to thank everyone, concerned citizens and neighbors that are here. Is there anyone from City Council here today that would admit to being here? I guess that's no. Okay. So then this is really a discussion between you. Thank you very much for having this, and then and for us. And so I think, like, my name is Gary Palmer, and I'm in the film business. I've been in the film business for 45 years. I've worked on films anywhere from $20 million up to $300 million plus. And, you know, my last film was How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey, which was, you know, $100+ million film, and you've got $132 million invested. I don't really care whether you make money or you don't. I've been here for 8 months. I am a mountain bike rider. I love the trails. And, you know, today I was up at 4 a.m. and I went to Sedona to ride those trails, which are pretty incredible. But let's try and ingest some common sense. And if you can, Benny, if you could just scroll up just a little bit on the map so that we can see the full lake. Thank you so very much, Watson Lake. Okay, so I'm not like a water scientist, and I've only been on this planet for, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but it's not 100. And so I'm an astronomer, and I'm an extreme astronomer, and I'm famous in the astronomy world for imaging the sun. That's a whole other deal. But anyway, let's get to the point. The point is anybody here or anybody else, can they predict that we can supply water for not only the homes that Mr. Geisy has, but those other sections and those other squares where other homes are being built? And so if you quickly go to Netflix and go to National Geographic, and it's called the California Water Heist. And when I moved from Brentwood, just 8 months ago, and I could not water my lawn for a year and a half. I could not do anything. There was like this whole, everything became a drought. And it was because this guy in the valley, he had 10,000 acres of almond trees, and one almond takes 1 gallon of water. Okay, and so long story short, we went without water. Now there was a town called Tulare, and for 3 years they turned on their faucets and no water came out. So whoever is in the California water heist, whoever signed off on it, it's the same thing that's happening here in Arizona, and it's happening in Phoenix and in Tucson, and they're doing this water exchange where they say, we're gonna put some water in your aquifer over in Phoenix, and when we need it, we're going to trade it, and so on and so forth. Same thing they did in California. So if we all want to become educated about the water, and it's really not about you, it's about someone else being paid off, and so on and so forth, like they did in California, that really, that little section of water down below, underneath the earth, there's not that much water. And that anyone that can stand here and say, I'm going to put 2 pieces of metal and I'm going to hold them together and they're going to tell me where the water is, and they're going to say for 100 years, we've got water. I got to say, they're looking into a crystal ball. And I got to say, it's like, for your fortune, it's $5 and we're going to tell you your fortune. And that's who is behind the scenes, pushing it all through, saying that this is all going to supply 1,700 homes. Not just Mr. Geisy's homes, but all the other homes that are in those other sections that we haven't talked about or we don't know. But drive around Prescott. I've only been here 8 months. There's all these signs, rezoned, annexation, so on and so forth. So common sense says 100 years, supply the water, not going to happen. Thank you very much.
I'm a very simple person. I've been in Prescott just over a year, and I get very concerned when I see this because I love hiking, I love nature, I love being outside with any animals and wildlife. And it saddens me to think that this is going to take place. I'm not only concerned about the utilities, water, electricity, and sewerage, but my question to you is, everything in life is compromised. So what can we do for you to get you to reduce the amount of housing that you want to put there and to keep it a certain distance away from the trails?
The answer is that as we wade into the annexation process, the one actionable idea seems to be a density transfer, where we'll look at the potential to locate density further away from the rocks, to make it very simple. The challenge is that from a water perspective, that may put open space, regional park in opposition to water. So that's the answer.
Why, Jason? Can you explain that? Why?
Why what?
Why would it put them in opposition?
If we transfer density, we add density further away from the rocks, the density or the units would require water. And if we move that number up, we're going to need more water. Yes,
Hi,
sir.
Jason.
Hi.
Obviously, the position here is that people are opposed to the area immediately around the point of rocks and that area being developed. You need water. This is nothing new to you. And, forgetting whether or not the water exists, you guys must have an initial negotiating position that you've already thought out about what you're willing to start as a starting point for your negotiation. What are you willing to concede for the water that you say you need?
The open space around Intro would go to the city of Prescott.
And around Intro is what?
Where Iron King Trail and Peavine Trail tee into each other.
Okay, and so how much of that space are we talking about?
So might be 60, 70 acres. that would go into the city's name and be owned by the city.
And so how much of a buffer would that put between the trail and development?
The buffer is actually a different question. Where there's alignment, not in this room necessarily, but when you think about the view shed, it's not in our best interest to create problems with views. It's in our best interest to minimize the impact of the visual impacts of housing as it relates to trail users, because our residents will be trail users, and as it relates to if our two houses are next to each other, and you have a 2-story and I have a 1-story, so
Right,
we will limit.
assuming that houses are gonna be 100 yards away from the trail, 200 yards away from the trail.
So as
or
we
talking 25 feet?
as we wade into the process and we add the layers to the map, meaning specifically a drainage study, archaeological study, there's various influences as the various constraints are quantified, and you start to see.
So basically no answer at this point.
We haven't spent the money.
Okay. Another question I had led into that is earlier when Walt was speaking, he was talking about the No Name Creek area up there. What is your company's plan for that area, assuming that you're doing whatever you want to do?
We've consistently heard that the desire is for a wildlife corridor, and the question then becomes, how big is the corridor?
And have you given any thought to that?
I have not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Hello.
Hi, my name is Happy Oasis. I live in the Dells. One of the oldest residents, more than 25 years in the Dells, very close to this property. Whoever's in charge of the slide, could you please reload it to the other slide so we could have a better look? Could we change it back to the other slide, please, so we can have
The
a better
computer moves slow here.
Meanwhile, No Name, first of all, I'd like to thank my neighbor Walt Anderson, because I couldn't agree with his sentiments more. Himself as a wildlife biologist, an ecologist in the true sense of eco, and I feel the same way. Ideally, it would just remain the way that it is. And there are many forces. Oh, sure. How's that? Okay. I wanted to make sure you could hear me. I didn't want everybody to say, Mike. All right. On the issue of No Name Creek, I had asked before if it would be possible if the city council does annex this, knowing the city council, what do you think? So if it is annexed, which I hope it is not, could that No Name Creek be free of a road? Because the road that you have proposed would definitely pretty much wipe out the wildlife corridor. Oh, are you thinking a trail instead? As Walt would say, even a trail can be injurious to the wildlife. However, it would be much better than a road. Do you have any thoughts on that at this point?
No.
Okay, you're still thinking about it. Secondly, I was wondering about the misconception that we might have. Several people have said we'd like to make a regional park in addition to a development, which would be disastrous, I think, because several people have said to me, if we don't have a regional park, nobody will be able to go there because it's private land. So my question to you is that it has been private land since I moved here. I didn't even know it was private land. I assumed wrongly that it was public land, but you have been letting us utilize it. Are you going to have no trespassing signs for the public? Or what is your intention there?
It's not fair to say that we've been letting you use that. We haven't been enforcing trespassing. And so in the future, as the property gets developed, obviously that would change.
And so the neighbors would have access in a neighborhood trail perhaps, but the general public would not have access, would that be correct?
The general public would end up using via trailhead. So there's multiple parking lots in the general area where you can either take a main trail or a spur trail to get in and around the Dells, as you well know. And so we do not have any, I guess, we haven't been talking about a trailhead at all in the past. And I don't know that the city of Prescott hasn't expressed that a trailhead in this location is desirable up to this point, so.
So in other words, people could access the Peavine and the Iron King Trail as they always have, the trails that already exist, but they wouldn't be able to go off trail.
Correct. So we have multiple trails that are have been wildcatted in on private land, if you will. The public trails are in public right-of-way owned by either the city of Prescott or the town of Prescott Valley. Some trails connecting are actually easements, but the public has a right to use those trails that are easements. In our case, I'm going to tell you, it's probably a combination. The spur trails that would link up to the main trail would be a combination of public access trails and then trails that would come from inside the subdivision that in essence, they wouldn't be labeled private, but that's kind of how they would function.
In other words, those trails would be more easily accessible by the people in the new subdivision.
Fair.
In Route 1.
Fair.
So in other words, it's not blanket off access. It's kind of a combination. Is what I'm hearing.
On trail access, in the past, conversation has centered around the utility of open space. If open space is private, we're required to provide 25% open space. That's the land development code, highest standard in the county. So I can guarantee you that you're going to see at least a minimum of that, because we've actually been looking at those aspects of the property. And the trails would be leading to and from existing trails, in and out of the subdivision, if you will. There'll be multiple trails. I can't tell you if there's going to be 2 new trails or 4, but multiple. And those trails would be primarily owned by the city of Prescott, is my assumption at the present time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Parcel, I have 2 more questions. If we look at the map, those who can see it, parcel 3 and 4 are on either side of the Peavine Trail. And living in the Dells and unknowingly trespassing all these years, I climb around in there a lot. And it's pretty steep, it's pretty rugged. It's a beautiful overview from the road, Granite Gardens Road, looking down into it. But I mean, it's pretty much cost prohibitive. Almost all of parcel 4 and parcel 3, both of those are really wild, and it would almost cost a lot more than you could possibly earn, it seems to be. So I was just wondering, a couple questions. One is, for me, water is non-negotiable, because how foolish can we be to give our water away in what is estimated to be a 50-year drought? How would that possibly benefit the people of Prescott to give away our water to a developer? So I know that your aim is to receive that water, and the city council might be in cahoots with you in that, but the people of Prescott would not. How would we benefit by giving away our water? I guess what I'm asking. But instead of that, because it's really non-negotiable for in a case of sanity, I'm not saying it's a sane world, but it would be insane to give away our water. We all know that. So how much would you possibly want for parcel 4 and parcel 3 that are virtually unbuildable? So from a builder's perspective, they're not worth very much. I have to let you know that. Because if you ever build a house, it's beautiful as a park, and we think of it as very valuable, but as from a builder, you might as well build in Chino Valley, because you'll make a lot more money in Chino Valley than in parcel 4 and parcel 3. So how much money would you want for what is not really buildable land because it's too steep? And it's
So
too full.
let's start here. In Granite Gardens, there's plenty of steep lots. True or false?
There's some.
Do they have houses on them?
The ones that have, I would say 90% of the lots that are, of the houses that are built there, are not built on rocks. And a good example of that is across the highway, a developer tried to sell lots in the boulders, and ECOSA ended up having to buy that because they couldn't sell a single house there because it's unbuildable.
So the point I'm driving at is that buildability of a lot is a relative. What I might build on, what I might want to build on, might be something different than what you choose to build on. And so when we look at the large granite spires, you can't build a condo building on top or on the side of that. There are multiple areas where there are coves within the boulders and flat spots that are conducive for construction, the construction of a home. And so as we roll through the process, what you're going to see is that the lotting in the prime area is tucked in to the coves and low spots where there's maximum privacy, where we minimize or eliminate roof lines. It's not a masqueraded subdivision, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I recognize that there's plenty of rough stuff that's not going to be built on. We don't intend to build on it.
Like even building a road would be so destructive and so cost prohibitive through there.
Well, you drive on a road through there to your house.
It's not the main part of the Dells, as in it's not.
So yours isn't quite as good, so it's okay that it's there? I mean, so the point that I'm getting at is everybody in this house lives in this room lives in a house.
I live in a house that was built by my own hands in the traditional ways of carpenters. It is great, because if we all built, instead of building mass amounts, if we built one house at a time here and there, a slow natural development, then everybody benefits in a slow way. If we have a developer build, then the developer benefits and the people are shocked. That's why people are here.
There was a developer that developed the lots that either you purchased and built your house on, or whoever built the house and you bought it from. It all started with a developer.
And there were 30 houses 20 years ago when I moved here, and there are 34 houses now. So there's been 4 houses built in almost 30 years. That's a nice rate of growth. The planet is expanding in population. So one is really slow growth, it's sane growth. Another one is kind of crazy. And that's why these people are here, because we are shocked that this would possibly happen. So
and by the way, there's multiple people that have moved here recently because it's a desirable area to live in. And that's not going to stop.
Will it be desirable if we have no water?
It's a question that we all have to answer for ourselves. I drilled a well at Jasper, 2,000 gallons a minute.
And so it's depleting the rest of our water. That's my point, is that anyway, for me, water is non-negotiable. I know the Save the Dells will have to figure that out. I would never.
You have landscaping?
I would never propose.
You cook?
To bring.
Trophy lawn.
I would never propose to, 100 years ago, when people would kill one person, they would be hung in the downtown square. What happens when somebody kills a whole town, where the feasibility of the longevity of a town is shortened? It's a kind of a white collar crime. Anyway, I have one other question for you, and that is, the casitas that you propose, would it be more eco, as in Arizona eco development? By the way, ecology means preserving the entire web of life. And if you go to Jasper subdivision, you can see that there's not one blade of grass remaining on his other project. And I'm really disappointed by that. So that's the ecology that we're proposing in the Granite Dells too. So the casitas, which in a sense are a great idea, places like the Grand Canyon, national parks, but I'm just wondering, would it be more eco if he's proposing up above the Iron King Trail, on the parcel that's right at the top there, that area near the grave and near that dotted road and all that whole area north of the Iron King and the Peavine, most of it, that it would become a resort. Would it be possible, if the city council agrees with this, to consider putting the resort up on high? Maybe it's a U-shaped resort. People would pay a lot of money if they had a view that would be a high view. Wealthy people love the long views, and then you would have a nice U-shape. You could have the parking in the back and just beautiful views overlooking it. That way, the area down below would be preserved. Just a question if that's anything that you had considered.
We will explore that option.
hold on to this because I don't know how much patience my kiddo has for this. We've been waiting for a little bit. Thank you for everybody showing up here, everyone who cares, and everyone who has vision for what's beyond right in front of them or, you know, this year otherwise. My name is Greg. I was born in Prescott in 1980. I've got a couple of questions for you. Have you hiked around the Dells?
Yes, sir.
Other than just the trails?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. And I heard that you're a hunter as well?
I am.
So you're an outdoorsman?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Okay, so a couple of things that I want to make clear. Of those experiences that you've had, hunting and being an outdoorsman, I feel like those experiences were probably unique for you, and I'm trying to figure out the value of those experiences for you. I didn't really write anything in particular. I've lived all over the world, 25 different countries visited to, and lived on 4 different continents. I moved back to Prescott to have this little dude and for him to be able to experience this area. When I grew up, there was no, like, the free range thing that they're talking about these days. It's crazy. We were just allowed to run around and do anything we wanted as far out as we wanted. So I'd jump on my bike and I'd go check out Thumb Butte, I'd check out the Dells, I'd go out really as far as I could and get back after dark, and that experience is absolutely priceless to me. I understand the financial benefit of this. I own land in Prescott and Prescott Valley. Thank you. It seems like the changes we'd make with this would be changing this land from experiential to observational. So I guess the best metaphor I can come up with would be, do you have children?
4.
Awesome. Are they hunters as well, or is that an interest? Are they outdoors people?
3 out of 4.
Okay. It would be like offering them to take them out hunting to some of your favorite places, but they've been converted into zoos. So you have to stay on the trail. You're not allowed to actually go out and experience the life that's there. That's the danger I'm saying. I want him to be able to go and scuff his knees up and, you know, run around and really have the full life experience out there. And it really does, it terrifies me to think that these could be turned into a bunch of California toilets or stucco, you know, piles of stucco. It's really, really scary to me. So, you know, but I understand business. I work in real estate as well. So I ask you this, what would it be worth to you for your children to never have those unique life experiences that you've been able to have yourself?
I'm a Flagstaff boy. I got to grow up wild and free there.
Nice.
And part of what's happening is that our area has grown. Things have changed. I was allowed to come back at dark and make it for dinner as well.
Nice.
That's not how my kids are being raised in the middle of Mayberry, Arizona, the city of Prescott. So the fact of the matter is that we're lucky with the National Forest, all the public lands that we have surrounding the area, and we definitely have pressure on the prime private land that is in and around the area. At the end of the day, as we work through this process, the reality of it is the map will start to evolve, things will start to be dialed in, and the conversation will continue. So would I love for my kids to grow up the way I did? Yes. Are they doing that? The answer is unfortunately no.
So we're at a place right now, sort of a crossroads, where you have a unique ability to affect the future of that, and it's one of those paths that you can't necessarily turn back on. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say about that.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here, Jason.
Thank you.
I'm Jeb Bevers, and also a biologist. Growth all around the West has been occurring. I mean, every state has been having growth, and Arizona is the fastest growing state in the Four Corners States. I moved here 15 years ago, also raised my family here. I hike quite a bit, and last month when you were speaking, just that day I was up on Thumb Butte, and I met 2 tourists from Victoria, Australia. They were hiking Thumb Butte, and the next destination they had was over into the Dells. So it's really widely known. This place that is almost Sedona like. And I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I believe that Portland, Oregon and New York City, which I've visited and worked in, are both great cities. And the reason for that is that they're not perfect, no place is, but the reason for that is that they've had relatively good city governments in many decades. They've been environmentally progressive and have produced large expanses of forested areas, hiking trails. Housing prices near those are the highest, just as your housing prices might be in the Dells. They would be even more upscale if you preserve more of that nature. And so the question is whether we have the foresight to do that, or whether we just have short-term greed. Think about the next 7 generations, not just your kids. Thank you.
I'm going to take 2 more. Great.
Hi, my name is Lori. I'm relatively new to the area, and I have 2 questions. The first one is, have you ever worked with a land trust company? Something to that avail where, you know, like everybody that's here, plus many that have already left, where we have the opportunity to raise enough money to, I'm not saying to squash the development entirely, but just to have something along the lines of Central Park, or greater, of course, to preserve the pristine for maybe one of the reasons that you came here, as well as one of the reasons that I came here and many other people. That is my question.
I've met with Central Arizona Land Trust, and we've had discussions.
And so with your discussions, have you come up with a rough estimation as to what you would settle on monetarily?
We haven't even begun to attempt to do that.
But the good news is you're considering it.
We're businessmen.
Of course
we're
you are.
Open-minded.
Good.
We're listening.
Okay.
And it's a process.
Okay. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity, and I want to thank everybody that's been here this evening.
Thank you. Joe's going to gang up on me right here.
Not a chance. Evening, folks. I'm Joe Trudeau, the chairman of Save the Dells, and it's too bad that so many people left, but that's because folks need to keep their comments short, all right? So Mr. Giese just said that he would only take 1 more person, and I'm not going to be that person. I want to be the last to speak. I hope you'll stick out. These 3 gentlemen who are very important members of our community have something to say, and I'd like to at least give them 1 minute each before I get up. How's that sound?
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Keep it tight, guys.
I'm Dr. David Brill, and until recently I was Chief of Primary Care here at our local VA. Now I'm running for Congress. In my opinion, our district has been starved of resources from the federal government for the past 6 years. There are opportunities for the federal government to come in and help here in monitoring the North Chino Aquifer, in helping some agencies to bring resources that could help build a park and bring a win-win-win that's fair for the developer and fair for the folks around, closer to Walt's vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Slayback, Jason. It's been a while since I've talked to you, and I want to make some corrections here about some misstatements on Proposition 400. I believe that the majority of the people here in the audience don't even know what it reads as. So I need just a little bit of background history on this. In 1984, the Sierra Club's greatest project within the city limits was the creation of the rail trail. Then, in 1985, there was a developer that was going to blow up the rocks near Point of Rocks to put in about 80 trailer pads. Then a little after that, there was another developer that was going to put in a shopping center and blow up the rocks to have room for that. So it is a possibility to build in the rocks. In 1985, I was out with the Board of Supervisors. We toured the land at that time, and they did not allow a change in zoning. Getting back then to what had happened a little bit later on, we had a same proposed annexation of these same lands. There was going to be for homes, for a resort, and in addition, which I don't believe you're planning, golf courses and lakes. That wound up with Proposition 400 being, at that time, passed by the greatest positive numbers in the history of Prescott, 58%. So I want to read the 4 bullet points out of Proposition 400. I'll try to hold the mic while I do that. It's pretty dark in here. I'm going to have to hold a flashlight to read them. Thank you. Any increase in the corporate limits of the city of Prescott by annexation that equals or exceeds 250 acres shall, 1, require an affirmative vote by 3/4 of the city council by yeas and nays. 2, require a public comment period of no less than 60 days before a vote of the city council takes place, which shall begin at the time of a formal vote on a master plan by the Planning and Zoning Commission. 3, require a public presentation of the public comments received to the city council by city staff. And 4, include a requirement that all effluent generated by new development in the annexed area be used for permanent recharge. That means there's no credits and you can't pump additional water based on the amount of effluent created. And that's all that's in Proposition 400. And a little bit more history then, a few years later, in 2005, the city thought they would get the population to pay for additional water, for additional development. That's when they purchased the Big Chino Water Ranch, and that resulted in Proposition 401, which requires for any project at $40 million or more, unless it is an emergency for public health or safety, to go to a vote of the public. Thank you.
I think he was over a minute.
Does that mean I only get 20 seconds?
Yeah.
Jason, my name's Mike Spencer. I'm a property owner in the Dells just below Willow Lake. My concern on your casitas and your resort, is there the word timeshare going to be involved in that? Because I hate to see our town turn into a Sedona with hawkers on the square pushing timeshares.
We haven't been considering a timeshare at all, no.
Good, good. I'd say if, Happy Oasis said there's not been anybody building a house in the Dells and the Steep Rocks. If you go to the subdivision on the west side of 89, take a drive through there, you'll see what is possible to build in the Dells. It's really severe, and it's not that bad looking, but it's very, very pricey. But it is possible, so get a chance, drive through there and take a look. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do I have to take a minute?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, thanks everyone for being here. I'm Joe Trudeau, Chairman of Save the Dells, and hopefully you got the message from us to come out and express your concerns to the developer and the City Council. I do know that I saw a council member here who will not be named for their privacy purposes. This is obviously a complicated subject, as we all are well aware of. I want to give you just a little bit of background on who I am, because a lot of people are wondering, well, who's behind Save the Dells? So I have, the last 20 years, been working in conservation, science, and education. I've worked in 20 national forests, 6 national parks, military bombing ranges, Air Force, Marines, Army, private lands with 4 or 5 different land trusts, a number of different agencies, billionaires who make everybody in this room seem very poor, and the poorest people that you could find in the forest. And I've worked with all of these people over the years to find successful collaborative solutions to conservation challenges. And this is an incredible challenge that I think that we can find a solution to. We have a lot of smart people involved in Save the Dells. Walt was a great example with what he said earlier. We have a community who backs this effort, and I think that we have a developer here who is willing to have a decent conversation with us. So from my perspective as a conservation planner, there are 5 things that need to come together in perfect harmony to make our vision for a regional park work. And as a side note, don't be afraid of the regional park. It's not going to be a zoo. It's not going to be a million miles of trails. This is, coming from me as a conservation scientist and planner, the most effective way to accomplish the most objectives to make everybody in the community happy and the wildlife as well. So 5 things. 1, we need a piece of land worth saving. We have that in the Granite Dells and Glassford Hill. We already have that. Number 2, we need a community with a vision. We have that too. We've got everybody in this room. We've got folks in our academic institutions and on our trails, folks in city staff, in the city government. We have a broad community of support to support a regional park concept. Number 3, we need a crisis. This is a crisis, right? Yeah, the moment is on us. The crisis is here. We either save this land or it's gone forever, whichever way the development goes. Number 4, we need bold political leadership. That's a question that I don't have an answer for. City Council needs to step outside of the traditional status quo position of simply giving a developer what they want with very little in exchange. For example, I would suggest somebody go and ask the City Council what the taxpayer got for the Touchmark development. I would suggest that somebody go and ask the City Council what the taxpayer got in return for all the annexation privileges at Deep Well. This development is going to be something different because we've got hundreds of people, we've actually got thousands of people now on our mailing list that care deeply about this. Bold leadership from City Council. That question remains to be answered. And number 5, the 5th aspect, is we need an interested and generous landowner. That's the way conservation transactions work. When you take away all of the feel-good stuff that we're doing in here as a community, this comes down to being a high-stakes real estate transaction. That's how all of these big deal conservation things go through. Across the country, through time and space, this is a real estate deal at the core of it. It's a business deal. So number 5, like I said, we need a generous and interested landowner. I think we have one right here. Jason has been very generous in his professional career with giving millions of dollars in land or support technical services to Boys and Girls Club, or excuse me, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and Prevent Child Abuse Arizona. So we have somebody here, yeah. We have somebody here who is invested in his community, who cares about quality of life issues, who cares about children and public health, et cetera, et cetera. We have somebody, both between Jason and his boss, Mr. Swanson, who have the financial capability to make sure that this can happen in an amenable way. The question then, that all of this comes down to is, do we have number 5 here? Do we have someone with the moral fortitude to think about the longevity of this community and the value of this land outside of just a low-density residential gated community? Do we have someone who's willing to think, like the last guy said, 7 generations ahead about the quality of life here in Prescott and what you and your boss can leave? And I'm not saying just give it away. This is going to be a deal with the city, right? What can you guys do to make sure that this goes through? We get this core of the Dells, Peavine, the no-name creek, the beautiful vistas out there, unimpaired for generations to come. That's the question that needs to be answered. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. We will, I'm sure, meet again as events unfold. Have a good evening.